everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And I just want to remind everyone about our Facebook page. If you head over to there and go to facebook.com/No Name Music Cast, we post all the links to the episodes on there. And we also post up some videos and some articles that we find that we talk about in the episodes. So head over to there and join us there. So this week's episode, it's my turn to pick the topic. And I have challenged Joy to listen to some albums, classic albums in my world. Some of them are genuine classics and some of them are just like classics because I like them, if I'm being honest.
Fair.
Yeah, but I've given Joy 11 because obviously it's one more than 10.
Obviously.
For our Spinal Tap fans that are out there.
Oh, I didn't even get it, but now I get it. Continue.
There we go.
I was like, yeah, obviously I should know what's happening.
So Joy has been listening to them over the last few, how long did they give you? 3 weeks?
2
weeks. So it's 2 weeks for 11 albums. I figured it wasn't a massive hardship for you to listen to new music.
No, also I listen to music 24/7, so it's pretty easy just to type in the name and press play.
Exactly. Put it on your cassette player or whatever you have.
Yes, definitely cassette player. Definitely.
There we go.
It was actually an 8-track. Let me restate that. It was an 8-track player.
Do you know what's fun? Before we get going, do you know what's funny about 8-track? Is like in this country, the United States, everybody fondly talks about 8-track. Like it's, my dad had an 8-track in his car and you see 8-tracks in Goodwills and people fondly speak of the world of the 8-track. I grew up with my dad working in a TV, radio, video shop. And I mentioned before, they had the second CD player in the United Kingdom in that place. And I don't ever remember seeing an 8-track.
Huh. When did 8-tracks were 80s, right?
No, 8-tracks was 70s.
70s. Okay, well, that makes sense. But I will say when I've heard of my parents speak of them, they don't talk about like they were that popular. I think it's more of just the fact that it's kind of just like a blurb in time and people like to bring it up to make themselves sound old. But that's my theory.
They were invented by the people who invented the Learjet.
Of course they were. Why do you know this?
Well, I mean, why do I know this? That's
all. I'm like...
And I think the original 8-track players that you saw in cars, I mean, I've never seen one, but I've seen this in like advertisements from the day.
Yeah.
But they used to be called Lear. I think it used to be Lear 8-track, or the brand used to be Lear because it came from the same people who designed the Learjets.
Okay, then. Those are two vastly different things to design, though, like on the opposite ends.
Well, you say that, but maybe the 8-track in its day was cutting edge and also a personal jet was cutting edge. I don't know.
I would take the jet, but anyway, continue.
So anyway, Joy's been putting her 8-tracks in and her cassettes and her flexi discs or whatever she's been listening to this on. And I'm going to start with one of the... I've got them all here. Apart from one album I don't have physically, I have them all on CD or record. So I'm just going to pick them up as I've got them. And then I'm going to get your opinions on what you think of these classic albums. So the very first one I'm going to pick out, which is a classic maybe in guitar circles. I don't know in rock circles, but certainly in guitar circles. It's Steve Vai's Passion and Warfare.
Okay. I will say I was not familiar with his solo work. Steve Vai's the one that's from Whitesnake, right?
That's correct. Yeah, he famously replaced, well, he didn't replace, when David Lee Roth left Van Halen in the early 80s, David Lee Roth put together a band and Steve Vai was the guitar player. And yes, and later on he went to work with Whitesnake and he worked with Public Image Limited and a bunch of other acts. He's a virtuoso guitarist to the stars type character.
So I really like this. I was confused with the speaking parts. At one point, it sounded like a small child was speaking to me. I think it was the Love Secrets. Was it Love Secrets? I'm like, Where's the child coming from? That was really random to me, but I was curious because the album sounds like it's supposed to be piecing a story together. So of course I went on the Google machine and it said that it's about like he wrote it about dreams. Did you know it was like about a dream he had or something?
No, I didn't know that.
I'm pretty sure this is the one. Yeah, he was like, he had like some dreams and that's why it's almost kind of like, if you listen to it, guys, go listen to it. It's really cool, actually, especially if you're a guitarist, which, like I said, this is probably the person of the list I'm the least familiar with, besides that I knew the Whitesnake thing. But it sounds very kind of like Into the Mystic kind of sounding off and on. And there's like random. Does he use other instruments or is it all guitar?
I think I've got the credits on the back here. I think he's mostly playing guitar. He's using a piece of equipment called an Eventide harmonizer, which was a piece of studio equipment that made its way into the guitar realm. So a lot of the like out there sounds that you hear on that are him playing guitar, but it's that piece of equipment that makes that sound.
See, I was curious if he was one of those, you know how like sometimes in the studio they do like weird stuff to get the sounds they want, because I was like, how is he? Because I assumed he's a guitar player based off of everything I know, and that's a pretty fair assumption. But I'm like, how is he getting these kind of like, because there's parts of it sounds like almost like a dream catcher or like I don't even know. It was really cool though. And I mean, I don't have much to say about it because it was my first time hearing it, but I really liked it. Does he have other albums or was that really his first?
This wasn't his first. His first album was one called Flexible. He was he played guitar with Frank Zappa for many years.
That was the other thing I read. It said he was a transcriptionist for Frank Zappa from 1980 to 1983.
Yeah, he was a very young man, and I think his dad took him to the Frank Zappa audition, and Frank Zappa was like, "Oh, young man, blah blah blah. Well, come back when you can transcribe this." And he, wrote it out on manuscript paper, absolutely note for note. And Frank was like, "Oh, okay. Well, maybe you can do this." So
he was transcribing, like he was hearing the songs and then putting it into like writing out the notes as he heard it.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure. When I first heard transcriber, I'm assuming they mean musically, but I don't know exactly Frank Zappa's life. Maybe he needed another type of transcriber at some point. But I didn't want to say anything because I felt kind of stupid. So I'm glad you explained that to me.
Also, what did you think of the track For the Love of God? That was actually a quote unquote single. There's a video for it as well.
Okay, hold on. I have to think of which one was that? I'm going to be honest with you. It's kind of a blur at this point.
It goes, meow, 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 meow.
Everybody's laughing because they're going, how's she going to get that from that Garfield sound? But I actually did get it. It was probably... It's towards the end, right? Or towards the beginning. It was like right either at the beginning or the end, but it's like really, isn't he like, it sounds like very sweepy, like he's picking very sweepy kind of sounding. So that was kind of cool. And there's like a lot of legato in it. Is that the song? So that was kind of an interesting thing because it's almost like he did a really good job with just a guitar for that kind of legato to hold those like notes and to give you that kind of feel. So that was like, I was like, for me, it was almost like I was dumbstruck because I'm like, I'm not a guitarist. And Tim, I've heard you maybe play the guitar. Maybe. I heard that once. But so I was just like, because, a lot of people think you need like to stack all these instruments to get that kind of full sound. But he pretty much nailed it.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested. I'm glad that you liked it and interested that you did like it because I think of the guitar music. I mean, I play guitar, but I find generally guitar music bores me senseless. But this is probably the best, as good as it gets, in my opinion.
I would say if I had to listen to guitar music and nothing else, this was really good because there's a lot of variation. It's not like, I don't feel like I'm listening to, a Spanish guitar for 20 minutes, like where he built all those pieces and like the way it is kind of whimsical. I guess because it's built off the dream, it made it feel more like a story more so than me just hearing a guy pick the guitar for 20 minutes. Yeah.
I mean, he has 10 plus other albums after this, and it all becomes much of a muchness after a while. But I said this is probably his magnum opus, and I got the CD on Amazon for $6 recently. So, but you can't go wrong with that.
I did learn. Hold on, there is one thing that I learned, Tim, that you will appreciate. Guys, if you're on the bingo card, what is it we say? What's this fact or what's the fact statement? Something, whatever's on the bingo card about. Did you know this? Did you know
They
this?
are.
He had a guitar, Steve Vai did, and he recorded a song on it. It was a 7-string something.
It's an Ibanez gem.
He gave it to Prince.
Oh, wow.
I thought that was really cool. When I was researching, because not only did I listen to the album, but I was trying to find out if I didn't know anything about the people or the history. Apparently, he gave his guitar to Prince. Why, I don't know, but he gave him Prince.
Because he got it for free from Ibanez, probably.
It says an early prototype, so probably it sounds like a beta version of a guitar.
Yeah, he famously plays an Ibanez gem guitar. The other interesting thing about that is around this time, he pioneered the use of a 7-string guitar, which has a low B string, which has more of a lower range. Mm-hmm. And, you know the kind of music that Steve Vai is playing. The 7-string Steve Vai guitar was adopted by Korn and all those kind of rockers and Linkin Park. And all of them, they now don't play Steve Vai guitars, but at the time, they all started playing Steve Vai guitars because they wanted that extended range to get that deep, grungy sound.
Oh, well, that's interesting. The only other thing I have about Steve Vai before we move on, because there's a lot to talk about, isn't there something in that song we were just talking about where it says, like, walking the line between pagan and Christian or something?
Yeah,
was that For the Love of God? Yeah.
That's the one.
Whoever's voice that was I don't know. It kind of creeped me out a little bit. The way he said it.
I don't know who it could have been him. I don't know.
Whoever's voice that is, if you're listening to No Name Music Cast, go to facebook.com/No Name Music Cast and tell me why you sounded so creepy. Because I understand For the Love of God, the pagan Christian thing. I get what they were going for, but I was just like, where did that come from? And then the child started speaking on that other song, and I'm like, where am I right now? But it was pretty cool. I'll give you that.
Well, there we go. Well, I'm glad you approve. All right. So we will move on to the next one, which just happens to be the next one in my pile of CDs I have here. And this is the first release for audio only release from this act. And this is Blue Man Group's Audio.
Okay. I have a lot of questions, not about anything specific. So, Tim, you're a big Blue Man Group fan, right?
Yes.
So they are the same. The Blue Man Group is the same. Like, they don't change people. They're not like the Trans-Siberian Orchestra when you go see them, are they?
Yes, there's loads of Blue Man. And in fact, there was a blue woman who appeared as a Blue Man. Okay,
I was trying to figure this out. So what I have to say about the album is, first of all, everything they do is super cool. And the thing about listening to this, and this is their only album, right? Like their only audio album or whatever?
No. There's a Live at the Venetian. There is The Complex. There is 3.
So is this the only studio album?
No, this is their first studio album. This is
first. I thought you said only. My bad.
Yeah, they've made so far 3 studio albums and 3 live albums off the top of my head.
So I'm going to give them some credit. I cannot identify one song on that album because I'm going to tell you the truth. I heard what sounded like a guitar, which was really cool, and a bunch of other instruments and people beating on drums and pipes and everything under the sun. So I don't know that I could really identify anything specific, but I've always credited them as the spectacle that is the Blue Man Group, the going to the live shows and that kind of stuff. So it was cool to listen to it without watching them play because it gives a different perspective into how they are musically. Mm-hmm. Because you kind of think, that, like, I've always made the reference to the musical Hair. So what's funny about the musical Hair is it's known not to have any substance. It's just flair, like literal flair or hair. You're distracted by all the hair is what people make jokes about. So it almost felt like the Blue Man Group is so like iconic for beating on pipes and making cool sounds, which it really does sound awesome. But listening to it just in an album without visually seeing that gave me a different perspective on how good they are musically.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is that most of the tracks that are on here are from their original show. So I've seen them in New York, I've seen them in Vegas. Saw them in London, and the New York show,
then.
Yeah.
Look at you, Tim.
The New York show is closest to their original show that they came out with way back whenever, early 2000s. And the music that's on this album is quite close to what the original show was.
Yeah, it's kind of what I associate the Blue Man Group with, so that's probably why.
I don't know. I like him. It's the sound is wacky, but I like it. I mean, many of the percussion sounds are them, as you say, drumming on PVC plumbing pipes.
But it works so well for like. It's kind of like we were saying, like with the guitar, like you can only listen to a guitar so much unless it sounds like they're kind of doing a story. And all of theirs almost sounds like a story. I don't know what the story is. Maybe that pipe attacked that guy. I'm not sure. But it just sounds cool. So that gave me, because I mean, I've listened to the Blue Man Group. There's a mashup Tim has recommended me from the Blue Man Group, the Donna Summer song, right?
I Feel Love.
I feel love. I almost said I feel good. And I was like, that's not right. That's not right. And a few other people who performed with them and stuff. And I have not given them enough credits, but they're so cool. Like there's just something very cool about it. But I was curious if it was different people every time you went to see them. So is there like a mass company of Blue Man people that like teach people how to play on PVC pipes? Are people auditioning for this? How does that work?
They have theater shows, or especially pre-COVID, they had theater shows all over the world, and they have a touring production. And there's probably 25 different Blue Men.
It's almost like a Cirque du Soleil or something.
And do you know what's funny is they got bought by Cirque du Soleil about 3 or 4 years ago.
That is not shocking at all, though, if you think about it. Not even a little bit, just because of the fact that they are that kind of feel. And earlier I just caught myself. So, like we talked about Trans-Siberian Orchestra, it's like different people now when you go see it. It's not the original people from Sabotage back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
I associate them. You know how like when TV shows get syndicated and they can play on any channel?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I imagine. That's the music version of being syndicated. Like multiple people can step in and just do it over and over again. Anyway, that's just what I thought. Anyway, continue.
And I have a at the end of the show, the Blue Man or a Blue Man comes out, and you can have your picture taken with them in the foyer. And I have a picture from the London production, and then I have a picture from the Vegas production, and it's the same guy.
Well, Tim, one time I got a picture with a Rockette at Radio City Music Hall. Yep. We're just so cool, man.
Exactly. And I would say to our friends listening, if you're not familiar with Blue Man Group, one performance of theirs I really like is they did an NPR Tiny Desk concert, and it's on YouTube, and it's like 12 minutes of chaos. It's absolutely fantastic.
Okay, I have questions, because if it's NPR Tiny, I've seen the Tiny Desk concert, Tiny Library, whatever they are, and it's usually just like a slimmed down version of whatever you're listening to, acoustic, kind of pulled back. Mm-hmm. So like instead of PVC pipe, are they playing on like baby versions of things? Like how does that work?
No, they're playing the PVC pipes, and they also had some new instruments, because they have a whole workshop where they come up with wacky instruments. So they had some new wacky instruments. And they very famously use the Chapman stick, if you know what a Chapman stick is.
Yeah, I do.
But they don't pluck the Chapman stick. They like bow it with a piece of bass string, and that's where that kind of wobble sound, that wobble comes from.
Oh, because you kind of, it's like a clunky sound normally, but that makes like a wobble. What scientific terms? A plunky sound, but now it's a wobble. Promise, guys, we're smart. Okay. All right. What we got next, Tim?
Okay. So the next one up, and this is the one that we spoke about on a previous podcast. So I thought I'd throw it in because it is a favorite, and every track on here is a classic, and that is Huey Lewis and the News' Sports. Okay,
guys, this one, there's about 3 albums. I'm not going to blow the surprise, but this one is in the top 3 by far. It should be illegal to have that many good songs on one. I mean, there's 5 singles on there, I think 5.
Yeah, you've got, you got Heart of Rock and Roll, I Want a New Drug, If This Is It, maybe Heart and Soul. That was probably released as a single.
I think if it wasn't, it was pretty famous. I mean, so first of all, Huey Lewis, I like, I'm a big Billy Joel fan, so I kind of like that doo-wop kind of sound.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when people do it, and you're listening to this album, he does it really well. They put a lot of words and tell a lot of stories. And if it's not done well, it's kind of weird. So I'm trying to think of like The Bad is Bad. He's telling a whole story. but he actually says he wrote that one. Did you know he wrote it when he was working with Phil Lynott or whatever that guy is from Thin Lizzy?
I do know that he played with Phil Lynott because on Live and Dangerous, the famous Thin Lizzy live album, he plays harmonica on one or two of the songs.
Yeah, and so he apparently Thin Lizzy, the lead singer Thin Lizzy, they perform it live. They perform another version of Bad is Bad at a faster speed. And I really want to find that now. But there's I got to bring up the track list and just go through it all because there's so many. I loved every song on this album. Not one song on this album was bad.
No, it's one of those albums that you put it on and you play it. And I don't think it's terribly long. It's like 37 minutes or something. But you play it from end to end and it's like, well, I'm going to press play again because it was so great.
Yeah. So the Heart of Rock and Roll. I mean, everybody knows the Heart of Rock and Roll. It's beating. Heart and Soul once again. And then the Bad is Bad. What was it I was listening to? Hold on. But we'll go over it in a second. I'll look it up. But then I Want a New Drug. That has to be a single too, right?
Yep, it was a single.
Walking on a Thin Line. That was probably the one it was a single when I looked it up, but I didn't know it as well. Like I know the chorus, but I didn't know it as well as some of the other singles on here, but I mean, it's still really good. If This Is It, I mean, that's like, what would you say? If This Is It, like Huey Lewis's number one song ever?
Well, the Power of Love is probably the number one Huey Lewis song.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But it's up there. Yeah. I mean, it's probably up there. And then You Crank Me Up and Honky Tonk Blues. I mean, I've never heard an album, and I'm not like Tim. I'm just going to tell you the truth. I'm guilty of just picking and choosing songs. Tim's one that listens from an album to beginning and end. And as he said, in our society now, because we have internet and where music's so readily available, we tend to just pick whatever song we want to hear. But this is one that I could listen to beginning to end and never be upset. I don't know how to explain it. He's happy. He's sad. He's got that new wave kind of pop sound in a few of it. He does some doo-wop in a few places. Like, I don't even know. Especially Bad is Bad has that doo-wop sound. And there's even like that backing track to it that sounds like that. So anyway, yes. If you guys have never heard this song, I will definitely listen to it from the beginning to the end over and over again because it says it's 7 times platinum, by the way. 7 times.
I could believe that. I mean, personally, I've bought this album 4 times, maybe back. I had it on cassette when I was very much younger. I got it on a CD when I was buying CDs way back when. And then since I moved here, I bought this CD and I have it on record as well. I picked it up in a thrift shop. So, I mean, I've personally bought it 4 times. Also, though, I feel like Huey Lewis has been used in like a lot of movies. Every single one of his songs, I feel like all the singles we were talking about, especially on this album, or The Power of Love, as we were saying a minute ago, they've been used in so many 80s and 90s movies. I mean, there's the famous Psycho one with Hip to Be Square. Is that what he's singing in this American Psycho? I mean, you know me in films.
Well, there was a song in American Psycho, but I'm just saying, like, all of his music is so, like, it's well known, it's happy, but it's versatile. It's not like overly poppy happy, so you're annoyed by it. I feel like it's used in juxtaposition of like things that aren't supposed to be happy in movies. In American Psycho, you may have seen it. He's walking around with like a pair of headphones on and like a business suit. And mind you, he just like murdered like 5 people or something because he's the American Psycho. And I think it's Hip to Be Square is what's playing in his headset. So that's like the way it's been used. Tim's like, I'll take your word for it. Let's see.
The only movie fact I know about this album is I Want a New Drug because they wanted the producers of Ghostbusters wanted Huey Lewis to do the Ghostbusters song, and he couldn't do it because he was already working with Back to the Future. So he either couldn't do it or didn't want to do it or something. So they got Ray Parker Jr. to do it. But Ray Parker Jr. basically copied I Want a New Drug. That and the Ghostbusters song are almost identical.
Oh. Now that you say that, I hear it.
Yeah, so Huey Lewis sued Ray Parker Jr. And because the Ghostbusters film was this massive, massive thing, and they didn't want bad press and bad weirdness going on, they settled out of court. and it was all just brushed under. And and one of the things that was in that agreement was a non-disclosure agreement that neither Huey Lewis or Ray Parker Jr. would ever speak about it. You know
it, so someone spoke about it.
So they had a VH1 Behind the Music featuring sports, and then Huey Lewis spoke about the lawsuit, and then Ray Parker Jr. countersued Huey Lewis for talking about the lawsuit and then got money out of him.
Oh, that's so terrible because he stole his. Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they both signed an NDA. It's like, okay, well, this money changes hands and no one will ever speak of this again.
Wow. So I did look up. It is hip to be square at American Psycho, and there's a lyric, a quote, and the quote is about sports. This is what I was going to say. He says, Patrick Bateman says, "Do you like Huey Lewis in the News?" Paul Allen, "They're okay." Patrick Bateman, "The early work was a little too new wave for my taste, but when sports came out in '83, I think they really came into their own commercially and artistically." So that's in the American Psycho movie. And then a few minutes later, or like an hour later or whatever, he's got the headphones on and Hip to Be Square is playing.
Yeah, well, there we are. I've never seen American Psycho.
I don't know that I've ever even watched it. I've just heard the references and seen the clip of him doing that before. Maybe on like VH1 or something. You know what I mean? Talking about something. I don't think I've watched like the whole movie. Sorry, internet. Don't come for me. I'm not a big movie person. Neither is Tim. We're just not.
No. I've seen. I have about 30 films I like. I made a point of not watching any new films this year, and I'm so far I've succeeded.
Did you really have to make a point? You probably would have done it without. You probably would have just did it.
I don't know. I saw 2 new films last year, but one of them had Queen in it and one of them had Elton John in it. So
how did I know that's where that was going?
Well, last year, or a year before, or whenever it was, whenever those films came out.
Pre-COVID, when something was happening back in the day.
Exactly.
But yeah, when we get out this, I want to find the Thin Lizzy version of Bad is Bad. They said it's a faster tempo and put it in the Facebook chat or group because it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd never heard that. So you should definitely post that.
They say he does it a lot in all of his concerts.
Well, I saw Huey Lewis at Elmwood Park about 4 or 5 years ago. And he may have done it, but it didn't stick in my brain. But I will say that was an absolutely fantastic show. And he opened with the Heart of Rock and Roll.
Of course he did, because it's the heart of rock and roll. Duh.
Yeah, because all the lights come down, and then you start hearing the beating heart, and then you see the band come on the stage with the lights off, and then the lights come on, cool. And it's a fabulous rock and roll moment.
I made one other note about sports before we move on. The Walking on a Thin Line, the song. Mm-hmm. The synthetic piano sound. I've said if you're going to do a synthetic piano, that's the way to do it. There's like a piano. It sounds like it's on a synthesizer or something, maybe something of that nature. Some way they made that happen in the studio. And sometimes synthesizers can be cool and sometimes they can be terrible. But if you're going to do it, that's the way to do it. That was my note.
I mean, I'm no keyboard expert, but it's probably a Yamaha DX7, which was the keyboard of the day.
I'm no keyboard expert, but let me follow this up with, I play the piano and I can't tell you what the keyboard of the 1980s were.
Well, here's one for the bingo card. You know Queen's One Vision, that bam, 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 bam. Yeah. That's a Yamaha DX7.
Okay, well, if it's related to Queen, I'll give you a break on it. All right, what's next?
Okay, so this is for our friends at Radio Freak Jam. This is a favorite, and I figured I would get you to listen to it. I'm not a massive fan of orchestral classical pieces, really. There's some stuff I like, but it's not really what I listen to a lot of. In fact, most of the things I listen to like that tend to be soundtracks. I've listened to some classical albums, and it's fine, but it's not really what gets me going. But I challenged Joy to listen to the original Star Wars film soundtrack by John Williams. What did you think?
Okay, first of all, I actually liked it because I like classical music. I will say I've heard most of that, even though I haven't watched, I've heard a lot of it in references to pop culture and stuff, but I have a funny story that goes along with listening to this album. So I put this one on and I was like, oh, here we go, Star Wars. I get the intro, and it said it's done by the London Orchestra, I think, right? The whole album's done by London Orchestra.
It's the London Symphony Orchestra, yes.
Okay. So I was driving home the other day when I put it on in the car. Hooked it up through Bluetooth. I'm safe, guys. So I was like, I told Google play it, and I'm like, okay. Well, this is whenever I left work early yesterday, day before, whatever day we had that terrible storm. It was like a thunderstorm. It was like so I had to go get some stuff for the doctor done, some blood work. I'm fine. It's okay, guys. Routine. So anyway, I'm driving and that thunderstorm starts and the music is like that intense battle music. And I'm sitting there looking up at the sky, like trying to think about, I hope I beat this giant thunderstorm home. And it was like the soundtrack to Star Wars was the soundtrack of me trying to beat the thunderstorm home because it worked so perfectly. It was like, intense and like right at me. And I'm like, oh my God, this, and it kind of made it even creepier because the wind was picking up and then the music was getting more intense. I was like, I felt like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. And the music is going to hit a part and I'm just going to get sucked up and take it off. That was the best part of it, to be honest. And any other part, I probably wouldn't have very much to say, but I was like, okay, I'm going to make note of this because this is amazing. I don't know how this happened.
It's like literally the planets align, the weather, the music, the mood.
I really did. I felt like I was going into battle. I was battling a thunderstorm, but I was going into battle. Would I listen to it again? Meh. Was it worth it? Yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, I like that kind of music too, so it's not that hard for me. I like syntheses and that kind of thing.
So, channeling our friend Sarah Petherick, do you think the Cantina Band sounds like Cha Cha, the Cha Cha music from the whenever it was?
Yeah, I can hear that. And I've heard the Cantina.
People doing the Charleston and all that stuff.
Yeah, I got what you meant, like when they're on stage with the big dresses and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and they go.
Yeah. Kind of, yeah, but I always assumed that was kind of the point because they're like in a cantina, and isn't that usually played in like a bar back in the old days?
Yeah, and do you know what? Before she pointed it out, I'd never really made that connection. But the minute she pointed it out, it was like obvious. And the fact there are even people on YouTube who are doing the Charleston and the cha-cha-cha type dances to the Cantina music.
Yeah, and that doesn't surprise me in any way because I hear it. I'm sure if we played it for Charlie, if you guys don't know this, my husband does have one secret music talent. He, as soon as he hears a song, he can tell you what other song it sounds like. I don't know why. He just has to scream it at me. I'm sure if I played it for him, he would instantly know. It's all it is a talent he's got, but he knows that one. Oh, he did actually play the violin. I'm not giving him enough credit, but anyway.
Well, I used to play the euphonium, so
I didn't even know what a euphonium was until Tim told me.
Well, the euphonium is a small tuba, and I tell you where this came from. So another one for your bingo cards. When I went to Grove Road School in Hounslow when I was very young, which is a school I went to between the age of 5 and 12 or 13, and they had a music class there. And you went into the music room, you expressed a preference of wanting to be able to play an instrument. So they took you into the music room, and all the instruments were laid out there. And the one in the biggest case was the euphonium, and I figured that would be the best one to have because it was the biggest case.
That sounds like a 5-year-old's logic if I've ever heard it.
Yeah.
Do you know why? As a so I started playing the recorder like every other person in the world. You know, they taught me the recorder when I was in kindergarten, and I could do a happy birthday or whatever. So then I started in first grade. I started taking piano lessons. I didn't join band. I took piano lessons outside of school. I just didn't feel like it. And part of the reason I didn't, it's because you had to carry your instrument back and forth every day. And I thought it would be really heavy. And so I would have had the opposite theory. I would have been playing the flute or something, Tim. So I didn't have to carry the euphonium back and forth to school every day. And then I ended up going to choir and stuff. So band wasn't really on my thing. But yeah, I would have had the opposite theory. Anyway,
I played it for in my brain a couple of years. It was probably like 3 months or something, but that's
the way it is when you're a kid. You can't keep up with time.
Yeah, but it wasn't for me. I ultimately needed to rock. That's what it came down to. And a euphonium isn't terribly rock and roll.
Yeah, not really.
Unless Unless, of course, you're playing in the Royal Philharmonic recording the Star Wars soundtrack. And then
that's what I was going to say. I don't know. I think the Blue Man Group could make a Euphonium work somehow in there. They do everything else. I mean, I'm pretty sure at one point I heard like a bell going off. Somebody just ringing the doorbell. Anyway. All right. What's next in the pile?
Okay. The next one that I've picked out. Now, for me, this is an album. I suppose it's like, you could almost call it a transitional album for me personally. So like growing up, I was very much into pop music, top 40 music in the 80s. Hadn't yet really started to play much guitar. If I had, I was very, very much at the infancy of that. So this was like an album that transitioned me into appreciating rock and hard rock and that kind of stuff. And it still blows my mind that this is their debut album. And this is Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction.
Oh, no. We're going to have fun. Okay. All right. Let me start this by saying I am not... Tim is much more of a rock person than me, and he still likes a lot of pop music. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of thoughts when listening to Appetite for Destruction. Let me find my notes. First of all, Axl Rose, his voice... Do I like it or do I hate it? I can't figure out which one. That's the first note that I wrote down. All right, let me find the one specific because I wrote some specific things. Okay. I said the intro to So Easy was cool, but how does Axl do that with his voice? There's like a very deep, almost kind of like grungy. I don't know. It's not even grungy, like that sound. Because, Axl Rose is known for his really high notes. But at the beginning of It's So Easy, it's super like almost like chesty. I'm like, how is he physically capable of doing this?
Yeah, and he also does it a little bit on like Mr. Brownstone. It's the same where it's like you say, he's got that high screamy famous Axl voice, and then he has this super low gritty voice, and there's no middle ground. He's either screaming his head off or he's just like really deep and low.
I'm like, there's literally no filler in this. I'm either here or I'm here. Yeah, there's nothing in the middle. So that's what I read about that. And then I had a question. Is the song Night Train about drugs?
No, Night Train is about that stuff you buy in gas stations really cheap, like wine, like Mad Dog 2020 and Wild Irish Rose. There's a similar one in that kind of ilk that's called Night Train.
Okay.
And for our friends in England, it's like the same kind of stuff as Diamond White. Like very potent alcoholic rough drinks.
Here it's like Mad Dog in America. Mad Dog, UB40 or whatever they call it. Yeah. There's a few of them.
Yeah, and it's unkindly called bum wines.
Yeah. You can get those here. Okay. See, I was thinking drugs because like the part was like loaded like a freight train, flying like an airplane, feeling like a space parade. By the way, that could have been in our song lyrics episode a while back. I was like, oh, okay. But I assumed they were talking about drugs. I had a lot of questions.
The one, Mr. Brownstone is about heroin because they were all heroin addicts at the time.
See, I knew they were on heroin, so I wasn't sure. And you can tell I've never experienced a heroin anything, so I don't know what it feels like. So I don't know what to relate it to, but that's what I thought. And then the out to get me, it's not it's TA, guys. I have a theory, or it's not like two, it's TA out to get me. So I was like, that sounds like a really good way from a singer's perspective to make sure you don't have to do that harsh TO sound. You just hit the and it sounds right. Anyway. Mr. Brownstone. Speaking of that one, I had it playing. And I was listening to a bunch of these albums again right before we started playing or recording. And Charlie heard it. And he said, as soon as Mr. Brownstone started, and Tim's, you're going to have to go back and listen to it because I know you're going to say, I have no idea. He swears it sounded like Down with the Sickness.
Yeah, I don't know Down with the Sickness.
The song from, hold on. Who's the one that sings it? Down with the Sickness. Get Disturbed.
I know the song title, but I don't know how it goes.
Oh, okay. I was like, you've never heard that. Okay. Go back, listen to Mr. Brownstone, and then listen to Down with the Sickness. Because Charlie, I told you his theory. That was his theory on it, which it could just be that they were both on drugs based off of what you just told me, and that's the sound you get. I don't know.
Tim's
like, I don't know. I said, I like the rhythm to You're Crazy, probably because I'm crazy and prefer the higher register for Axl Rose.
Mm-hmm.
His name isn't really Axl, right?
No, his name is William Bailey.
Because if your parents named you Axl, you were bound to be the lead singer of Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, no, his stage name is W. Axl Rose, but his parents call him William Bailey.
So I've heard that album is a turning point for them in general, right? Like that was like their first album, their big whatever. It has a very punk. It has some parts in it that have more of a punk feel though than I was expecting for Guns N' Roses. Like I associate them with that more kind of rock 80s rock hair band, but there were some pieces in it that surprised me because it has a little bit of a punk sound to it.
Yeah, I think they were very much influenced by the Stooges and also the Sex Pistols and a lot of that, like you say, that kind of like punk sound.
Yeah. There was just like little pieces of it because, you know, you don't necessarily, when you think Guns N' Roses, you don't think punk music, but I heard it in different songs, especially the You're Crazy song, which actually was probably my favorite song on the entire album. Mm-hmm. I heard it a lot in that one, and that's probably because I like more of an upbeat sound and kind of like different variations. And some rock music can just sound the same all the way through. I hate to say that, but it's true. So that's what I liked.
They did a covers album called The Spaghetti Incident, which was mostly punk covers, the kind of music that influenced them. So it doesn't surprise me that you listen to this as a first listen, and that's what you got from it.
Yeah. See, there's a brain up here, guys. I'm just a little silly. But I do think out of that whole album, You're Crazy was probably my favorite song.
Okay.
Mostly because it wasn't that deep.
I can tell you what my least favorite track on this is. That's track number 9, a song I never, ever want to hear again in my entire life. In fact, I don't even want to speak its name.
It really killed me to listen to it, Tim. I was very close to hitting I've heard this a million times. Let's Paradise City on through. Come on. Yeah. Oh, well, but it was one of their most famous songs. I mean, give them that.
That's true, but so Welcome to the Jungle.
Mm-hmm. I still don't.
And Paradise City.
Paradise City was the one that was hard for me. So I said, let's Paradise City on through, but Welcome to the Jungle. Well, remember, there are people who think it's Prairie Dog City out there somewhere. So when I heard it, that's what I actually thought of is in the Misheard Lyrics episode where we called it Prairie Dog City.
and you know, I don't know if we covered this before, where the Welcome to the Jungle title comes from. Did we cover that on a previous episode?
I don't know. We've talked about a lot, Tim. Throw it out there again.
Well, Axl Rose was originally from Wisconsin or Montana or some...
We definitely haven't talked about this because that doesn't sound familiar.
Some place like that. And he comes to Los Angeles to find fame and fortune. And he's on a Greyhound bus and he gets off a Greyhound bus station somewhere on the outskirts of Los Angeles. And he gets off and he's fresh-faced and he's young and he's naive. And some homeless guy walks up to him and says, "Do you know where you are? You're in the jungle, baby. You're going to die." And that's where that line comes from.
Yeah, you've never told me that, Tim. That was one that I haven't heard. Okay, guys, I learned something new today, too, because a lot of times I feel like we've talked about multiple things over and over again, but that one's new.
There you are. See, another rock and roll fact for your bingo cards.
And he won a meat raffle right directly after that. He went down the road.
He went to a American Legion club straight after that and then won a big piece of pork on the bingo.
Which is good because he didn't have any money because he was just a starving person in LA getting their fresh start. So he really needed the meat. He didn't have a place to cook it, didn't even have an apartment yet, but that's how he got the meat raffle. Oh, Lord. All right. You guys heard it here first. Exclusive.
and Axl Rose, Mr. Bill Bailey, if you're interested in correcting your side of the story, and I know you listen... we record at 7:00 on a Wednesday Eastern time, so you're welcome to phone in.
We will, even if it sounds terrible, you're going to get that phone call because we want everyone to know that happened.
Exactly. 018118055. That may be a phone number from a TV show from my youth, but there you go. Anyhow.
Anyway, next one.
So This next one is another album which I enjoyed a lot growing up, and I've recently repurchased it again, and that's Madonna's True Blue.
Okay, that was my number one out of the whole spiel. First of all, Madonna is a goddess. I absolutely, even though I know she's known to be a little bit of a diva and yada, 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 she could be a diva. She's Madonna. Let her live. The whole album is fantastic. I think there's 5 songs on there that were singles again, just like sports. There's at least True Blue, It's a Benita.
You got Papa Don't Preach, Open Your Heart. I think Live to Tell maybe was a single as well.
It
True
was,
Blue, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And then La Isla Bonita.
There you go. Somebody's yelling at both our Spanish pronunciations. Yeah. That's not how you say it.
Now, you know, the one thing that I in addition, I mean, I was familiar with all of these albums and Joy wasn't. But as part of this prep and research for this episode, I went back and listened to all these albums. And I hadn't heard this in its entirety for some time. And the thing that struck me the most about it is that I felt the production sounded dated.
See, I don't know that I felt that way. I'd maybe, now that I have that in my head, I need to go back and listen to it again.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I'm familiar with every song on this. I've listened to this album hundreds and hundreds of times. I know all the songs on it. But as I said, I bought it on CD a couple of years ago, but I really put them all in for a good hard listen before this episode. And I just thought it had, compared to, like, sports is of the same era, give or take a few years.
Do you mean like sound quality or production, or just
like production? There's like synthesizery, synth pop production quality, not the mix or the compression.
Okay, that
ratio
makes more sense, especially when you're thinking like the song like "Where's the Party."
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's underrated, but it does sound very 80s, and the production sounds a little, off. But I will say, I did think it was underrated. It reminded me of another underrated party song, not related to Madonna, but I feel like everybody should like it. What is it? The one, My Girl Likes to Party All the Time. What is it? Who sings that one? My girl wants to party all the time. Tim, who sings that song?
Eddie Murphy.
Another party song that's completely underrated that I feel like should be on more party lists is "Where's the Party" by Madonna, which is on the True Blue album, and then Eddie Murphy, which also probably sounds very dated production-wise too. But now that you said that, like "Where's the Party" did sound that's the one that sticks out in my head that I could hear that kind of low production quality.
Yeah, it's just like the sound of the drums, the sounds of the synthesizers, the sound of the way the guitars are done. It's very much of the era. Sometimes you go back and listen to these albums from the 60s, 70s, or 80s, and they can still sound pretty fresh. But you put this on, and it immediately, it opens with Papa Don't Preach, and you'd think Madonna with Madonna money backing this, they could have had a real orchestra playing that orchestral part as it opens, but it's very clearly a synthesizer making that sound.
See, I'm just so biased because I just love all the songs on there. It probably went right past me because I'm too busy singing myself, like when that comes on, that I didn't realize it. But then there's like the song, the song Jimmy Jimmy, which is probably the other song besides Where's the Party that's the least known on the album. Yeah,
because the whole thing is like a lot of these tracks are like 50s throwback tracks via the 80s.
Yeah, so the Jimmy Jimmy one is literally playing on that very late 50s, 1960s, almost Shangri-La, those girl groups back in the day. And like, it's almost like My Boyfriend's Back, but like her version about James Dean. So but you're right, though, even though it was a throwback to the 50s and the 60s, I will say the production quality, now that you say it, I hear it on those two songs the most, which makes sense because those are probably the least songs that we know from that album. And then there's that other remake of True Blue at the end. The color. This CD I have has it on it. Oh, but see, this is a trend that they've started to do. And I know not many people are buying physical media these days, especially if you buy the CD version, you get the standard album with all the tracks that you like. And then they throw like 3 or 4 remixes on the end that nobody wants to listen to. Yeah, it wasn't that great. I'm not going to lie, I just kind of cut it off halfway through because it had like a beginning that like, sounds pretty cool, but then it just went into True Blue all over again with some backing noises and synthesizers, as you pointed out.
Exactly. I will say I do like there's 2 tracks I really like on here. Open Your Heart, I think, is a great track.
110%.
And also White Heat.
That was the one that I wrote down that I liked a lot.
And it has that quote from it's like some sample or quote from a film at the beginning, and I don't know what film that's from, to be perfectly honest.
I didn't either, but I'd heard it. But so was it a movie? Because she's talking to the guy, and I wasn't 100% sure if it's from an actual movie or not. Maybe
it is. I honestly don't know.
But that was one that I wrote down. But I will say once again, though, I love Madonna. So for me, this was the one that I'm going to be the most familiar with, of course. And it was the one that I was singing while I was making tacos before this podcast. So, they're really good. They had black beans. Anyway.
I'm sure Madonna will be pleased to know that she was the soundtrack of your delicious supper.
Do you know the funniest thing, or what I find hilarious about Madonna, is her riff with Elton John and the things they say back and forth about each other? Have you ever heard some of the quotes? Hold on.
I know that she has a friendly, slightly unfriendly sparring relationship with Elton John.
So Elton called her ungracious and nasty for the Lady Gaga feud. That's the most recent. But they've went back and forth for years, and there's like a whole thing of them. Like, they're just both divas. Like, Elton's a diva too. Mm-hmm. And so if you listen to the quotes they say about each other, they're so over the top, ridiculous. Anyway, that's like my favorite thing. That's my favorite piece of trivia about Madonna, is the fact that she has a decade-long feud with Elton John.
Well, I was going to say earlier on, Madonna invented being a diva, but then thinking about it, Elton John probably invented being a diva.
So here's one from Elton. He called her a fairground stripper.
Goodness me.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's not relevant. I just find their feud really funny. And if you have a little bit of time and you need to laugh, just go look up things Elton John has said about Madonna and things Madonna has said about Elton John. Lord. All right, Tim, what's next in the pile?
Well, the next one is the only one of this entire bunch that I don't actually have as a physical item.
Oh.
And that's Deep Purple's Machine Head.
All right. Don't come for me, Internet. I liked it, but every song kind of sounded the same. It was hard for me to, I don't know.
I think this album in particular has the highest proportion of songs that people would be familiar with, I think. I mean, they've had dozens and dozens of albums, and they continue to make new music to this day. Mm-hmm. And they tour, and, they're still a thing. Richie Blackmore, the original guitar player, is no longer in the band. Steve Morse is now the guitar player. He used to play in Kansas and a bunch of other bands. But this one probably is their Queen's Night at the Opera, if you will, as far as like the classic hits and the album that everybody knows.
Okay, so what is cool, and then this is my opinion. It's not that they're talented musicians. I like their music. I have no qualms about that. It's that every song on the album just sounded very, very much the same. They kind of had that bluesy, soulsy funk sound kind of, and then they play that into like some rock riffs and stuff like that. It felt like every song kind of had that going for it. Mm-hmm. I did take some notes though, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not saying that I don't hate, or I'm not saying I hate Deep Purple. I'm just saying this album was the hardest one for me to listen all the way through. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. It just was. I'm sorry. It's true. So the first thing I wrote was on Highway Star, his car can break the speed of sound. Is the girl, and then he starts talking about a girl. I said, is the girl his car? And if so, is her name, what is her name? So I was trying to figure out if the car and the girl were the same person. And then there's the maybe I'm Leo or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm Leo. I said, maybe Leo is the name of the car. That's what my brain thought. I said also that Leo is my favorite. I really like the rhythm and blues. I know Ian Gillan, is that how you say his name?
Ian Gillan.
Yeah, that. is known for having like a very high range. Like sometimes he like screeches at you almost in a way. I said I liked him on the Leo song better because he was in a lower register and I preferred that over the screaming.
Maybe this is where Axl Rose got his idea from.
Yeah, same deal. I don't know. And then I wrote Smoke on the Water just makes me think of high school. So we all know Smoke on the Water. We can all agree is the most famous Deep Purple song, right? Don't need to get into that. But in high school, and this is for our England friends, this is for America, when we have football games, and by football, I mean American football, we would have a band who would come out and perform, and they would have what's known as fight songs. And so every so often you'd hear a fight song, and Smoke on the Water was one of their fight songs. And for some reason, they played it way too much at every pep rally and everything, which, it does sound cool. Don't get me wrong. It's got that cool intro and stuff, but I can't hear it anymore because I've heard it so many times.
And that is the ultimate rock and roll story song.
Why do you say that?
Smoke on the Water. It says we all went down to Montreux to make a music at the Geneva shoreline. So they went to Montreux to make an album. At the casino. They had the Rolling Stones mobile truck to record it, and then some stupid with a flare gun burnt the place to the ground during the Frank Zappa and the Mothers concert, and that is the whole story song. That is
the most ultimate, like everything that could happen to a rock star in 30 seconds ever.
Yeah, but like the whole song is the story of them trying to make an album in Montreux and then the place burning down.
Well, that explains why there was a lot of smoke.
And you know what's funny is that, I know it as that's what it's famous for. And I was telling Hannah, my wife, about this, and she loves story songs. That's one of the things she really loves is story songs. And I mentioned Smoke on the Water, and she said, "What do you mean?" And then, obviously she knows Smoke on the Water. So we put the one of these YouTube videos up with the lyrics, and she's like, "Oh, I never realized that."
Well, now I'm listening. I'm been going smoke on the water and fire in it, and I'm like, oh, got it. They
burned down the gambling house. It died with an awful sound.
Huh. Well, I would have never known that, Tim. I would have never known that, guys. But that literally sounds like when you're trying to make up a story about something that would happen to a group of rock stars. And everything that could, like when you're watching a sitcom and everything that can go wrong in one episode does. That's what that whole scenario sounds like to me. They just woke up and everything that could go wrong went wrong.
Absolutely.
And then they got a great song out of it. Their number one hit. So can you say?
Everyone knows that. That is we've spoken about classic rock radio and the 10 songs that they know. That is one of the 10.
That's fair. And then I love the song Lazy. Completely different than the rest of it. Even the lyrics were lazy, which is awesome. Because it goes, you don't want no money. You don't want no bread. There's only 3 lyrics to the whole song. So it was funny because the lyrics were lazy and the song was okay. That's just what my brain thought. And then I asked, is space trucking a drug?
I'm not sure, but it was the 70s, man. I'd imagine it's some kind of recreational drug reference.
I wrote, are they peer pressuring me to go space trucking?
Or maybe when you're on the recreational train, maybe you go space trucking. I don't know.
I don't know. But that was everybody. That was my full circle with Deep Purple. That's all I got. He has a car named Leo. They played it a lot at my high school. The lazy song has lazy lyrics, and I think space trucking is a drug.
There we go. That's Joy's instant review on Deep Purple's Machine Head.
Somebody's going, and now we know why she does it on a review article on the internet. I don't review our albums for a living. Okay. Actually, mine would probably be more funny than some of the ones you hear. All right, Tim.
Okay, so the next one is probably known as the greatest rock live album of all time. And this has various versions, so I don't know which one you listen to, but this is The Who's Live at Leeds.
Well, it had the logo that you're holding up on the video, but I don't know. Anyway, so it was the full concert live at Leeds. And hold on, let me find my notes. First of all I kept thinking about is how cool it would have been to be there, like at live, because they have such a unique sound that hearing this live, like if you were in person, I think would have made it 74,000 times better than it already was. Now, I will say, when it comes to The Who, I know they're very well known as one of like the greatest bands of all time, right? We can all agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't give The Who enough credit, I think, than they do. I don't know why. I've never taken the time to really get invested in them as a band as I have, say, like Queen or something of that nature. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why. I've heard many good things. I've even heard that the Beatles put out, some of their songs to compete with The Who. That's how good The Who was in their heyday. Yeah. So, I don't know what it is.
Helter Skelter was put out because the Beatles wanted to prove they could rock as hard as The Who did.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, everybody's heard Bubba O'Reilly and things like that. But I'm just saying, as a whole, I know The Who is a very talented musician band. They're held at a high regard. But I personally have not. I don't know why. I need to, basically, is what I'm getting at. But the coolest part of this for me was, one, that it would have been really cool to be there live, because I imagine it would have sounded awesome. But there was a version of Summertime Blues by Eddie Cochran they performed live.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, when I used to play music with Ian and the people in the Freak Jam band, that was one of the songs we used to play, that very version.
So that's just one of the things that stuck out to me the best. But I was sitting there and I was like, I heard the intro and I was just kind of like tapping my foot. And then I started singing, I'm gonna make a fuss. And I wait a second and I went, wait a second, what am I saying? And it dawned on me what they were playing. I have never heard The Who's version of Summertime Blues. It was fantastic, mind you. Mm-hmm. And then right after that, they fade into, it was almost like, I don't know what the guitar term would be. Almost like a vibrato where they fade in and out with the guitar kind of hooking back and forth. Mm-hmm. After that, into their next song. So they went from the Summertime Blues to that kind of hook. And I thought that was such a cool transition. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, the whole thing sounded great. I loved it. I was sitting there thinking this would have been like fantastic, to be there. It sounds like it's one of those concerts that everybody has esteemed at the top of their concert lists. And I can tell why, because everything sounded really cool. But the Summertime Blues thing threw me, Tim. I was not expecting that at all.
Now the version you had, this is in my hand. I have for viewers who are listening by audio can obviously see this. The version I have in my hand is the vinyl reissue album. And when this first came out, Live at Leeds was 8 tracks or 7 tracks. But as the years went on, they started releasing other parts of it. And now there's a deluxe version, which is everything that was played on the day. And on the day they played many more tracks than's on this vinyl copy, and they also played the whole of Tommy. Now, is the version you listened to, did it have the songs from Tommy on it?
I don't think mine was about 33 minutes long, so I don't know that it was long enough for that.
No, you would have had this one, which is, you heard the classic Live at Leeds.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That was the one that YouTube gave me. Sorry, guys. When I typed it into YouTube, that's what I got. But anyway,
the other interesting thing about Live at Leeds is that it was recorded at Leeds University in the refectory, which is basically the restaurant at the university.
So was there a live audience?
Yeah, there was a live audience there. However, when they recorded it, there was no audience microphones. So again, if you hear the original 30-odd minute version, you can't really hear the audience. You might hear some spill that had come off the vocal mics, but there wasn't really any audience noise. But
I heard a few little bubs and that was it.
But there's not much of it. But if you have the deluxe version of this, what they've done with technology is they're able to go into the vocal mics and the instrument mics on stage, remove the part that the microphone was supposed to be picking up, i.e. the vocal or the instrument, and then extract the audience noise and then put the audience noise in between the tracks. So it sounds like a contemporary live album.
So that makes sense. And that's why I asked, because I thought I heard little kind of pieces of an audience. And then when you hear live at Leeds, you assume it's live. But I didn't hear like a grand, and there's no interaction between like the Who and the audience, no going back and forth. But I thought I heard one or two little claps or something. So there you go. That explains it. I was curious. One thing, though, is the Who has like, and in this album, but this show album, whatever you want to call it specifically, it reminded me they have a sound that I don't hear very much in other artists. And I think it's the guitar player. Is he known to have a distinct sound?
Yeah, so the Who is, for a rock band, is completely backwards. So really the percussionist of the band is Pete Townsend, because he's famous for being a rhythm guitarist. I mean, he plays some lead, but his rhythm work is what he is known for. He plays rhythm, and that is what he does. And he was the one who was the percussionist almost of the band. Then you had John Entwistle on the bass. Again, this is wacky. He's effectively the lead guitarist. He had a very bright bass sound. He pioneered a lot of the equipment for electric bass of the time, and having that very clangy, twangy sound on the bass was very unique. So he plays a lot of the lead, and on some of if you listen to the songs hard, you'll hear that some of the lead stuff is all done on the bass. And then you have Keith Moon on the drums, who is basically playing the part of the orchestra, because, I mean, he's not a conventional drummer. He didn't use a hi-hat. He used a ride cymbal instead of a hi-hat. And, every drum fill he has is completely all over the place. But all that chaos mashed together works. And it's really Pete that's holding that whole thing together.
I like how you just described the drummer as like Animal from the Muppets, just like flailing around crazy. Anyway.
And do you know what's funny? Animal from the Muppets is based on Keith Moon.
Oh my God. Well, you gave a perfect escape, because I just imagine him being Animal from the Muppet. Oh my God, he does. I don't think Animal has a hi-hat now that you said that. It's just like a crash cymbal.
Yeah, that's correct. Or it's a ride cymbal.
A ride cymbal. Okay, anyway. So that explains it, though, because when I was listening to it, and like I said, I know like top 10 The Who. I'm not even going to get into it, guys. You can come for me. It's just not a band I have been that invested in. We all have them. And I was listening to it and I was like, they just have a different sound. So the way you explained that was much more technical, but I heard it because I was like, I don't know how to explain it, but there's something different than what I hear when I hear other rock bands, which explains why they were so popular in their own kind of thing. Because, the Rolling Stones is the same way. They have that unique sound you don't hear anywhere else. Mm-hmm. And so that's the way. Okay. Well, now Tim just gave me the 411 on that, because I thought I was going crazy. I'm like, something does not sound correct, but it works. And I couldn't figure out why.
Yeah, and I mean, there are other live albums. So they're live at the Isle of Wight Festival. I mean, that's fine. But live at Leeds is the definitive document of the Who at that time.
Makes sense.
And also it has the song Tattoo on it, which again is another classic story song. Oh,
yeah, I heard that one, but it didn't really associate with me. What's the story?
It's me and my brother were talking to each other about what makes a man a man. Is it brains or brawn, or the month you were born? And then he goes on to say he gets a tattoo, and he shows him and his brother both get a tattoo. And they show it to his mother, and one of them is a lady in the nude, and the mother thinks it's sort of rude, and then he gets a tattoo of his mother's name, and she kind of liked it.
I heard it, but none of that registered with me until you said it back. All right. What we got next, Tim?
Okay, so this is another album that was incredibly, incredibly, incredibly important, so I hope you don't hate it. If you hate it, it's fine. So I discovered Queen early 90s, and Freddie was still alive when I discovered Queen, but then Freddie died not long after I discovered Queen. And then the guitar player from Queen, who I kind of like, released a solo album, and I saw the tour in 93, I believe, backing this at the Hammersmith Odeon in London. And this is Brian May's Back to the Light.
Okay, Tim, this was number 3, so it was in the top 3. Absolutely adored it. It was gorgeous. It was pretty. It was fantastic. The intro with the We Will Rock You.
We Will Rock You, yeah.
I was very confused. I was like, oh, I hope the whole album's not quite like this. But Back to the Light, that was cool. I was like, At one point, I was like, did he use dream? It almost sounded like dream catchers, like making a like, you know, like a dream catcher, how they have like the beads on it or something. I was like, how did he get that sound? That's something I wrote down. I don't know what specific sound I heard, but I wrote that down. I said, it's like the opening of I said every song sounds like he's opening a new concert with that guitar riff. I was like, and then I wrote, man, just such a good guitarist. No wonder Tim's obsessed with him. And then the Far From the Light opening, I said it reminded me of a church hymn, but in a cool way. I don't know if you hear that, Tim, but that's what it reminded me of. And then I said, I'm already addicted. Out of the entire list, this is one of my favorites, and I've added it to my favorite playlist. Tim will be happy to know. But this is just a weird thing. When Brian May was singing a few times, he reminded me a little bit of Meatloaf, but not quite as operatic.
Yeah, I could get that. I mean, Brian May is, I mean, he can sing. He can sing much better than I can sing. But I mean, he's not even as good as Roger Taylor, really. I mean, he was the middle voice in all those Queen stacked harmonies. And he sang a few songs on Queen albums by himself, Sleeping on the Sidewalk, and a bunch of other songs that he would sing by himself on various Queen albums through the years. But this was where he sort of stepped up and sang the whole thing. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, his voice is as good as it needs to be, really.
It is. And I don't mean this to insult him. I'm not saying that he couldn't. I don't know what his register is. I don't mean because, you know, Meatloaf is obviously known for this extremely high, like we've talked about in the last episode we gotten. Maybe my brain is thinking about Meatloaf because we talked about him the last. But his tone, Brian May's tone, if anybody goes out to listen to it, it sounds very reminiscent of Meatloaf. I don't know why. It just did. I also wrote, why is Brian May's solo career bigger? ? Tim, you can explain that later. Love Token. Why does everything so good? Da, 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 da. Oh, I said mom's throwing pans and am I in a musical now? Where was there a song about his mom throwing pans?
Which track?
I think it's Love Token, maybe. I didn't write the name. Something that he was like telling a story about moms throwing pans.
Yeah, I think that song is about the breakup of his marriage, to be honest.
Oh, I was like, well, anyway, because it's like bantering back and forth, and there was a statement about mom throwing pants. I just wrote, am I in a musical? Am I in a musical now? Yeah, and then there was like a piano outro or something.
Yeah. I think that's the song where he's talking about when he broke up with his first wife, Chrissy May.
Huh. Well, I was super confused, but I liked it based off of these notes. And then I wrote, there's a song called Resurrection. I said I really like the tempo in that song was super intense, but once again, he reminded me of Meatloaf. And then I said, where did the creepy opera voice come from? But it does make sense with the song named like Resurrection. So, and then there was a song called So Scared, I think.
Yeah.
I just said, why is he so scared? Because there was a lot of I'm so scared, I'm so scared, I'm so scared over and over again.
Well, maybe he was a bit scared when he wrote it.
And then Philip Sayre, the British actor, there's a song on there that was written for the British actor Philip Sayre. I have to look up which one it was. I read that fact.
It's
I don't even know.
Just One Life.
Was he friends with him? Why did he write a specific song about this actor? Do you know?
I don't know. I mean, I've read that in the liner notes. I mean, I could almost recite the liner notes of this album off. I've played it and listened to it so much. And I've read that, but I've never really looked into why. I assume he was just friends with him.
I was just curious because, like, I thought the song sounded like it was specific to someone who had passed away. So I Googled it, of course, and it said Philip Sayre, who was a British actor, which I honestly am not even familiar with him. I don't know him from Brooke. I just assumed they were friends or something because it'd be kind of random for him to write that very serious song with someone he wasn't that close to.
Yeah. I mean, Brian May's allowed to have friends who are actors, I suppose.
Possibly. And then my last thought was Rolling Out was the best on the album.
What, Rolling Over?
Rolling Over. I wrote out. That's autocorrect on my phone, everybody. Don't come for me. I took the notes on my cell phone, okay? They're very plotchy, but that was my favorite of the whole album.
Well, I'm glad you liked it because, I mean, to some degree, it's kind of Queen light, sort of, but it's not. Some of the songs are different. It has Cozy Powell playing drums and Neil Murray playing bass throughout most of it. And I don't know. I mean, this.
I really liked it. I put every song on my favorites list on my Spotify.
The thing is about this album is that it's been deleted for a long time. And Brian May was talking about reissuing it. and remixing it.
I know you said it's hard to find copies of it.
Yeah, I mean, the copy I have here, I bought a copy, when was it? Well, it was a little while ago. It was a gift. And I didn't want the United States issue, which has a different cover. I wanted the UK issue, and it was hard to find. And we found a copy in South Korea, sealed, still in the plastic. So the copy I have here came from South Korea, even though it's a UK issue. Now, when it came out in the early 90s, of course, I had this album.
Yeah.
But when all my CDs evaporated into the sands of time, I sadly got rid of it. But I'm very pleased that I have it. I mean, of course, as an obsessive Brian May geek, when he reissues it, I will buy the same thing again, of course, because that's what you do.
Well, I will say it was in the top 3 up there with my Huey Lewis and Madonna. So you won me on that one, Tim.
Well, that's good. And again, a lot of people like yourself, I mean, you're a Queen fan.
Yeah.
You probably never knew this existed.
Mm-mm. Not a clue. I mean, I knew Brian May had a solo career. That's why one of my notes said, why wasn't his career bigger? Like, this is pretty cool. And obviously I wrote like 1,000 notes about how good of a guitarist is this dude, but everybody already knows that.
Yeah, I mean, he made another album after this called Another World in 1997 and toured it in 98. And I think what happened, he when Freddie died, he wanted to distance himself from the Queen world. He wanted to go out and do something different. He played a few Queen songs in concert, but he wanted to remove himself from that universe to some degree.
That makes sense, though.
And then
and
then a number of years passed, and he decided he wanted to be in Queen again, which, I mean, we you know my thoughts on the Queen plus karaoke experience thing is not my favorite, but he decided he wanted to do that again. And then I think his solo career sort of fell by the wayside. For many years, he didn't even really acknowledge this stuff. But as of recently, during the lockdown time, when he hasn't been able to play, a lot of people have said they've been enjoying his music. And that's when he said that he's in the process of reissuing all his solo albums.
Makes sense. Well, I think we only have 2 albums left, right?
We do indeed. So let's go with this one. So this is probably not known as one of their super classic albums, but it's one that I really enjoy, which is the Rolling Stones' Voodoo Lounge.
Okay, I wrote probably the most notes on this one. I had a lot of thoughts and okay. So I've made the comment before, the Rolling Stones to me are very interesting. I'm not a big Rolling Stones fan. They're okay. They're not a band that I'm like the super fan of, you know, not like when me and Tim talk about the Beatles or Queen or Spice Girls. But yes, I equate them to the Spice Girls. Come at me. Anyway, so their lyrics are something else. And when I say there's something else, they have some of the most detailed, like thought out lyrics on this. There was one, I said, who uses the word disposition in a song? Like, and uses it well and rhymes it well. I think the song was called like Disposition or something. That was just the lyric I wrote down. I said there, but everything until I kept thinking all that. And then there's a part, the suck on the jugular song.
Yes.
But I was like, okay, now I don't think they're as deep as I thought they were. Anyway, I was like, I like it, but I don't understand it. Because the suck on the jugular part sounded very different than the rest of the song. So I didn't know how they went together. And I'm like, is Mick Jagger a vampire? I'm very confused by what's happening right now.
Well, he may be a vampire. He's like 80 years old and he's running around. He's almost looks as good as Sammy Hagar, and that's saying something.
And then I wrote New Faces, which was another song on there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said he or she must be cheating. And then I wrote, is he ringing your bell? Or is he ringing your bell? And then something about he's going to rot in hell. That was the song lyric. And I was like, seems a little unoriginal, but fine. Like that was the song lyric that stuck out to me through that whole thing. So basically all I got from the Rolling Stones is a lot of song lyrics I wasn't expecting. I did read that album was produced by Don was something.
Yeah.
Okay. Apparently Don mixed a bunch of songs they wanted on this album. I don't know if you knew that, Tim, because he said they were more groovy Jagger said that they had a bunch of other music that had more of a groove and had some African influence and those type things, and he didn't like it. And Jagger disagreed. He said that was a mistake. He liked the groovier sounds. But Don said he wanted groove with substance in context of the album. He didn't just want groove. And he said that he wanted that because he thought that's what people expected from the Rolling Stones, groove with substance. But for me, the Rolling Stones are kind of known as like the rhythmic kind of groovy band. Like when it comes to rock, that's what I've always kind of associated them as. So I thought that was kind of weird. They went back and forth on that.
Yeah, because they're known for being a rock and roll band, but they started off as rhythm and blues and it's rock and roll. But I mean, they've encompassed all manner of genres of music. I mean, even like disco, like Miss You is disco. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I always kind of thought they were more funky kind of rhythm, kind of blues, but apparently that's not what he thought we expected from them. And since this album was so popular, maybe that's why I'm not a record producer, I guess. Anyway, I wrote the song Sparks Will Fly. Not appropriate for work. Glad I have headphones in.
Yeah, there's a few spicy words on this album. I think the copy I have mine is actually a US copy from the 90s, and it doesn't have the parental guidance explicit thing stuck on the front.
Anyway, so that's all I wrote about that song. I was shocked. And then I said Blinded by Rainbows. Is that what it's called? Did I write that right? Okay, well, even the sound, the title of that song sounded weird to me. So it sounds like something, it sounded like another song. And I spent the entire song trying to figure out what it was, and I never did. So if someone knows what, I even Googled it to see if somebody else has made the reference, and I could not find it. If everybody will go back and listen to Blinded by Rainbows and tell me what song it sounds like, I'd really appreciate it because it drove me insane.
Is it that Rolling Stones song that goes, My Sweet Lady Jane? Is it that one? I can't remember the title of it.
You could be right. I'm going to have to listen to both of them after this. There was another song, and I was like, it sounds like something else, but I can't place it. Anyway, now I got to figure it out. And then it's something I said, but I really like the sound increasing in Blinded by the Rainbows. And then it goes into Ronnie's like solo. He's the bass player, right, Ronnie?
Well, they had it's the guy called Daryl something. It's not Bill Wyman playing bass. Ronnie Wood is playing rhythm guitar on this.
Okay, so whatever, it's like it increases, and then there's like a solo. I can't remember if it was bass or rhythm. There's just like a solo that comes in. Apparently, though, that Blinded by Rainbows was about the Ireland conflict.
Okay,
I read that too, and it was recorded in Dublin. So there you go. And brand new car. I just wrote ew. I know they're known for Lick It Up, but wow. We don't need to get into details, guys. Take it how you want it. So I said I had a lot of diverse notes on this one. So what I learned from this album is they have a lot of very varying song lyrics that go everywhere. Yeah,
that's true. And the other thing about this album is that it's got so many tracks on it. It's like 2, 3. It's got 13 or 14 tracks on it.
Yeah, it was a long. I mean, I don't want to say long like it was miserable to listen to, but it was a longer album.
Yeah, and I saw them touring this album at Wembley Stadium.
Yeah,
and they had the Black Crowes supporting them on that tour. And we got to Wembley Stadium, and it looked like it was going to tip down with rain, much like your Star Wars incident from earlier. And of course, like Wembley Stadium is all standing, so there's nowhere to go. So it tipped down with rain like you wouldn't believe, and everyone got wet. And then just as the rain started, the Black Crowes came on with their support slot, and they were supposed to play 30 minutes or 40 minutes or something like that. They literally played 2 songs and bailed.
I've seen the Black Crowes before live, though. They're actually pretty good when they don't bail, I guess.
Yeah, it was good. And then someone came over the public address system and said, Rolling Stones will be performing for you, rain or shine, ladies and gentlemen.
I've been to a few concerts where it rains. Sometimes it can be really fun. Sometimes it can be miserable. When you go to, for people in America, this is a concert venue that's close to us, but it's an indoor kind of thing, the PNC, or you've got like the PNC concert, Tim, in Charlotte, where you've got like the half over you, half of this out and thing. I looked out because we were going to see, when I went to see the Offspring, we were supposed to be all the way out in the back, but thankfully it had a big thunderstorm had came in. And so a bunch of people didn't show up because it just stopped just as they because they kept pushing the concert back and back and back. And I said, I'm going because I drove all the way to Charlotte. I'm going to see the Offspring because they're one of my favorite bands. But anyway, so we were going to have to stand in the back, and because it was post-storm, it was going to be like 1,000 degrees humidity, and there was still some raindrops. Because half the people didn't show up, we got like front row seats underneath the venue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really nice because I mean, the tickets weren't that expensive, but I mean, I wanted to see the Offspring, but they're not one that I was willing to spurge to get all the way in the front. Mm-hmm. But I didn't have to. I ended up getting all the way in the front anyway.
Thanks to a thunderstorm.
Thanks to one thunderstorm. It was pretty intense thunderstorm, though. I will say that. All right, we got one more, right, Tim?
Okay,
one more album?
so we're going to close out this album challenge of challenging Joy to listen to music that she's never heard before, album she's never heard before. This is the last one. So this is Extreme 2 Pornograffiti. Now, what I remember about this album is I remember when it came out, and I remember in guitar magazines they were bigging up Nuno Bettencourt big time. And I had a trip to Germany to see my uncle around the time this came out. And I originally bought my copy in a record shop called Music Laden in Germany. And I remember I went into looking through the racks and I found it. I thought, oh, that's cool. I'll buy it. And it was months and months and months before I saw it in any record shop in England. So I felt whether it came out in Germany first, I don't know. But certainly I had it in my hand.
Could it have been banned because of the title?
No.
That's probably more of an American thing that happens occasionally then.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
And especially in Europe and even in England, they're not prudes about things like that.
Well, America, man. Anyway, so thoughts on the album. The first thing I wrote down is, why is he screaming at me? I never said I didn't like it, the get the funk out or whatever.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I said. I said, but I do like the song. I don't know why you're telling me to get out, but I like the song because I like kind of that funk music sound. I wrote, this is the most diverse album by and large, I think, of all the ones we listened to. It had a lot of different sounds. Susie, what is it? Susie want her? Is it Susie want her all day?
Sucker.
Oh, Susie, autocorrect guys on my phone.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want her all day. I said, I forgot Extreme was a hair band. So what I mean by this is, we associate Extreme now with the more than words kind of sound. Mm-hmm. Well, this album reminded me that they were a hair band first and that kind of sappy love music second.
Yeah, because like More Than Words is almost an afterthought on here. I mean, you have Wholehearted as well, which is an acoustic track, but people know them for More Than Words, which is that one anomaly acoustic hit. But this album and the album before it really represents what they do. Yeah.
So that was what was interesting, because this was more of what they are at their core, I think.
Yeah.
The reason I wrote that is Sucker Want Her All Day is think about the song lyric. And obviously it's a little bit more, I guess, 80s hair band, to say it politically correct. Whereas, I was thinking, when I think Extreme, I think More Than Words. And I was listening to this album, I was like, I'm very wrong. This is not what they do all the time.
No, that song that you're talking about, the subject of that song is an inappropriate, not safe for work conversation.
Yeah, so that's why I left it very vague, but it reminded me of what they like. Yeah, anyway. And then I said, is there something called He-Man Woman?
He-Man Woman Hater, that's it.
Okay. I said, what is this opening? I'm not sure if I like it or hate it. I'm not even sure I remember what the opening was like. Do you remember how it goes, Tim?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's got like, he's making like monster sounds with his guitar.
Monster sounds. No wonder I said I don't know if I like it or I hate it. That was my hot take on Extreme too. I don't know if I love it or I hate it. But basically what I got from the album is I forgot they were an 80s hair band based and associated them with a different sound than what they truly were.
Yeah, I mean, and they made an album like after this called Three Sides of Every Story, which is the same kind of idea, but a little bit more progressive-y type stuff.
You guys can't see it, but I saw Tim's face when he said it. It was funny. Yeah, let's just say the political correct version of whatever you wanted is 3 sides to every story on what the content of the album was. So Tim's face was funny, but yeah. Yeah, that's what I got. Then that's pretty much all I wrote about it, is that I learned a lot more about. I guess I don't know Extreme that well, to be truthful.
I mean, Nuno Bettencourt is an absolutely fantastic guitar player. Really good. I mean, like, and they're like.
What did you say his name was?
Nuno Bettencourt.
Never heard it before.
He's an American, but I mean, his heritage is Portuguese.
I would say Bettencourt doesn't sound very American.
Yeah.
Is Extreme an American band, or are they from somewhere else?
Yeah, I think they're from Boston.
I don't know why. You can put them up there with The Who. I have not listened to them as much as I should. Sorry, guys. Tim forced me to listen to them, and I had a lot of thoughts, and now I'm going to have to go find out more because it was pretty cool. This was a cool project Tim did, and of course I enjoyed listening to music in general, so it's not like it was difficult to throw some albums on. But I will say, go ahead.
I didn't think it was going to be any hardship to give you 11 albums to listen to.
No, in 2 weeks. Like, I could listen to them all in one day. But I will say, I think my tops had to have been Sports, True Blue, Back to the Light. Let me think about this. Those were my top 3. It's probably going to be weird, but I really liked the Steve Vai album, even though I'm not a guitarist. I thought it was cool. And The Who Live at Leeds was cool, mostly because I got really shocked when Summertime Blues came on.
There we are.
I don't know what else to say.
And I'm pleased you like Steve Vai's Passion and Warfare. I was expecting you to say, well, I listened to that album, you guitar players.
It was more diverse than other albums with guitar. And it was just interesting because I didn't know anything about it. Besides, I've seen him in Whitesnake before. So that made it kind of cool. Gave it some type of interesting piece to it.
Well, good deal. Well, fabulous. Well, I think that wraps up our episode. So thank you, everyone, for listening. And we will have another episode for you next Wednesday. See you later. Goodbye.
Bye.